Welcome everybody, welcome to the ElaadNL Webtalk number 73. My name is Martijn Siemens and I am a part of the communications team here at ElaadNL. As you may know, ElaadNL is an initiative of the joint Dutch grid operators, and here in Arnhem we test and research smart and sustainable charging of electric vehicles. Usually our web talks are in Dutch, but for this one we had to make an exception because there's very much international interest in this subject. In this web talk, you can see them right here. Flip Oude Weernink and Robert Italiaander from ElaadNL will present the findings from the first edition of the BuildZero Test Event, which took place in November 2024. They will discuss the interoperability between various construction machines, charging stations and battery systems, and identify the actions needed to accelerate electrification in the construction sector. Subsequently, we will have a panel discussion which will feature Gerard van der Veer from Emissieloos Netwerk Infra and Hans Zwaanenburg from BMWT. If you have any questions, please type them in the questions box of this web tool during the web talk, and this web talk is being recorded and will be available later on YouTube. So let's get started. Flip and Robert, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Martijn, for this clear introduction. And indeed, we will have a look on the key findings and the conclusion of the world's first BuildZero Test Event. The event that we hosted in November was the world's first in its kind. Robert will dive into the details, the technical details later on. I will start with a brief introduction about ElaadNL and also about the BuildZero project of which this test event was part of. Robert, if you can jump to the next slide, please.
Yes.
So, as Martijn already briefly introduced, ElaadNL is an initiative that was founded in 2009 by the Dutch grid operators. It's well known as a research and innovation center in the field of smart charging infrastructure. And currently, we're working with approximately 60 FTEs on all challenges that we see and all innovations around smart charging. Here in our test lab in Arnhem, we have the largest testing site for smart charging. And our goal is to promote open innovation and open protocols, something that also applies more and more to the construction sector. Next slide, please, Robert. So briefly about ElaadNL, three main pillars and all activities that we do. The first one is research, where we deep dive into the different e-mobility sectors. For example, data analysis and outlooks. Outlooks are research documents in which we research the market developments in certain sectors, for example, logistics, passenger vehicles. We're working on vehicle to grid. But last year we published also an outlook concerning construction machinery, learned some very interesting things that lead to, for example, the BuildZero project that we'll present later on. But also for the grid operators, we perform net impact analysis. You can imagine that the electrification of all these sectors has quite an impact on the electricity grid. And by data analysis, we try to inform the grid operators what that means for their grid. The second thing that we perform here at ElaadNL is innovation. So we do a lot of research on smart charging, on charging protocols, but also, for example, home energy management systems. Cybersecurity, quite an important topic at the moment. And like I said, also vehicle to grid. The third one is the realization. So we do a lot of research. We draft our conclusions out of this research, and then we do some innovation. And of course, we need to test this innovation also into practice, and that's what we do during the realization. We have our test lab that I will explain in the next slide. Like I said, we have the smart charging test ground here. But we also focus on human capital, because all this knowledge that we gather here at Elaad, the aim is to transfer that also to the labor market. And we do that via a human capital program. And next slide, please, Robert.
There you
So about the ElaadNL Test Lab, what we do is we perform several tests regarding charging and smart charging, like power quality, cybersecurity, interoperability, and we do pre-certification and pre-normative testing. That means that we are not a certificating body, but we will advise manufacturers of vehicles and manufacturers of charging infrastructure to improve their products and improve the grid integration and the interoperability. We do this open and for free, because the Elaad and the grid operators think that it's very important to do this pre-market testing to make sure that each vehicle that comes on the market will work in terms of interoperability, but also on the grid. Our testing lab is suitable for all kinds of electric vehicles, including buses, trucks, and also construction vehicles. Normally we do one-to-one testing, so we test one vehicle on one charging station, for example. For this test event, it was a little bit different. Robert will explain that later, but there we had multiple assets that we tested in a sort of rotation setup. We have different kinds of public and home charges here in the test lab, so that means that we are able to test vehicles on all kinds of different charging infrastructure. And we are able to test with our bidirectional test system from Keysight, which enables us to test all different kinds of grid setups. Next slide, please, Robert. Like I said, we published an outlook on construction machinery mid last year. And one of the main findings in that outlook was that smart charging is required for construction machinery to enable this sector to grow in the Netherlands. And therefore, we launched the BuildZero Knowledge and Innovation Program. And the goal of this program is that we facilitate the upscaling of the zero emission construction sites through smart charging and through interoperability. And we do that with 3 partners. ElaadNL, main partner. We team up with the Oude University and with a technology service provider. And this program is subsidized by the province of Gelderland. 4 main topics in this project. The first one is living labs, where we will gain knowledge in practice on existing charging stations, existing charging hotspots. And one of the deliverables of this project is that we also will develop our own BuildZero charging plaza here in Arnhem, where we can test in the daily practice on interoperability on smart charging with construction machinery. Of course, this data will be analyzed and will be transformed into questions that can be taken up by the Oude University. And of course, all this knowledge will be transformed into tools and in the human capital program. Some highlights of the research and knowledge agenda that we have within BuildZero was the charging hub in Arnhem that I just mentioned. We are working on a construction power calculator for the contractors, for example, in the construction sector, to be able to calculate their electricity demands of zero emission projects in the future. We try to get together a coalition of the willing, so all kinds of companies, institutes, and also governments that work on this topic. Open protocols for standardization and interoperability is one of the main topics in this program. And the BuildZero Test Events are, of which we had the first one, is a very important activity in this program to get insights in what's actually happening in the sector when it comes to charging and smart charging. So that was a brief introduction in Elaad and BuildZero, and also the reason that we had this BuildZero test event in November last year. We will now have a quick look on how this BuildZero test event went with a short video. And afterwards, I will hand over the mic to Robert, who can explain the test event and the main findings and conclusion of the event into detail.
I wish you all happy testing.
This is the first BuildZero test event. We do it now because a couple of years we have experience testing in the field. We used these machines as operating machines, and we experienced a lot of problems. Problems with charging, problems with smart charging. The machines itself, they perform fine, but the interoperability, that's the problem. This big equipment, they appeared around 2019. Then there were few, all conversion machines. And nowadays we see the OEM machines coming from the factory. On this test event we have diversity of machines, we have the equipment, we have battery boxes, we use them as transport batteries, and we have the charging equipment, and we will test them rotating.
There's a high ambition in the Netherlands to electrify the construction site. You see a lot of new innovations coming up in the market, but they're not all reliable, so we need to test what's the cause of that. Like with passenger cars, all these machines and infrastructure are talking with each other through protocols. And during this test, and we call that interoperability, we'll find out which way the machines and the charging infrastructure will talk with each other and where probably faults or errors are occurring.
I'm sure if we test here in this test event and everything works, that the chance that we get a problem in the field is very low.
So my expectations are that we're not going to run into that many difficulties because we've been in the field very long and we've charged many of these vehicles before. So we're just trying to see if everything is still working correctly, and if we do run into some difficulties, that's why I'm here and my colleague is here as well, and we have people on standby in Finland to help us remotely. I think testing events as this are very important because it is guaranteeing the interoperability between the EVs and the hardware suppliers of the chargers, for example. And the last thing you want is that you buy something and they do not work together.
We started this program for EV equipment machines about 4 years ago, and we now follow producing about 2.5 years. We hope that we do more events like this to get more information also for the market and also for us as an equipment supplier.
Well, at the moment we expect that all the tests are going well and that there will be no problems. But if there are some situations where it's not going quite well, then tomorrow someone from Volvo will be here as well. And he can help us if there are any limitations of problems with the charging.
Today we're going to have our set line machine. This is an excavator, a 25-ton machine. We're going to be testing it on multiple different EVSEs in different configurations. I'm looking forward to testing our machine and getting to know the different EVSE suppliers here and also the EV suppliers. I think it's going to be really fun to test our machine and see if we can break it in some way. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
We expect to have many more editions of this one. We already see a lot of suppliers already in line, eager to test their equipment. And the ultimate goal is that every machine that comes to market will be tested in the Elaad laboratorium.
Now I'm waiting. Yeah. Okay, so you had a first impression about the BuildZero Test Event. I'm explaining a bit more how we did it, what the general findings were. First of all, an overview of the event. The event was organized by ENI, BMWT, and Elaad, of course. It was done on the 25th of November to the 27th. 3 types of equipment were tested: construction vehicles, DC charging stations, battery systems. And one thing to mention is that the tests were done by the engineers of the manufacturers themselves. So Elaad had a more organizing role in this and facilitating role, but the tests were done by the equipment manufacturers. So about the equipment that was tested. As I said, 3 types of equipment. First of all, we had DC charging stations. The participated parties were ABB, Kempower, and Oude. A battery charging system also participated. This is a battery system that is able to be charged by a charging station, but can also be used as a charger, so it can also charge up a vehicle. Of course, we had construction vehicles, 3 excavators and 1 wheel ladder, sorry for the English word, Caterpillar joints, Liebherr, Volvo, and Komatsu. And we as Elaad also took place in testing with our testing machine. We have a 360 kilowatt EV/EVSE emulator, and this device can either act like a vehicle or as a charging station. This testing was done in 8 testing sessions of 1.5 hours each, and took 3 days. And what we did in every testing round, every partner was combined with another one. So for example, a charging station tested with a vehicle, or a vehicle with a battery system, or a battery system with a charging station. It was also possible that one of the 3 machines tested with us. So we had all kind of different combinations that we tested. Good to mention, we had a test protocol in which some tests that we could have done were described, but it was only to give them a certain way to test. It was not mandatory, and if 2 partners wanted to test something different, some advanced features, they are also free to do that. But the testing protocol that we gave had 3 components. One was the general behavior of the machine, so things like, does the connector connect well? What kind of LED indication is there? Next to that, an important focus point was the supported protocols between charging station and vehicle or battery system. And the 2 main protocols that were tested were the DIN 70121 and the ISO 15118-2. Next to that, smart charging was tested. We gave the participants a smart charge profile, which you can use during the testing, and also post or delay testing charging was tested. And we go to the general finding and results. So during this presentation, we'll not give detailed results between 2 parties, but we'll give general overviews about what we find. The first one, we focus on general insights. Some things stood out. The first one was that the charging port does not have standardized locations. Some have them on the left, some on the right, some on the front, some on the back. So there was not one standardized way where the charging port was on the vehicle. And also the LED colors used on the vehicle and the charging stations were not standardized, were not all the same. Not everyone, for example, used blue as a charging color or green as a ready to charge. Therefore, Elaad recommended to use the following colors. Indicate green when charging, when you're ready to charge, blue when the charging session is active, and red when there's some kind of error. Also, we had some safety insights we saw. the first thing we saw that every vehicle had or an emergency or a stop button in the cabin of the vehicle, and one even had an additional button at the outside of the vehicle. Also, all charging stations were equipped with an emergency stop button. But there was one problem with the vehicles and the charging stations, that it was not clear whether the red button was a stop button or an emergency button. The difference between those two is that a stop button is used when you want to stop a charging station in a controlled way, so the current is going down slowly, and then stop the charging station. And an emergency button is used when there's some kind of emergency and you want to start charging to stop immediately. It was not quite clear from the outside of those buttons when you should use them. Then the interoperability results about the charging protocols. One thing that we found is that all equipment supported the DIN 7121, so that was good. However, every vehicle and charging station claimed to support the ISO protocol. However, the tests that were done on this was limited because all vehicles prioritized the DIN spec over the ISO spec. And therefore, when a charging session started and they were in the handshake phase, the charger chose the DIN spec as the protocols that was used. One main difference between the DIN spec and the ISO spec is that in the DIN spec there is not a way to stop the charging session, or no, to pause the charging session. If you want to pause the charging session, you can say, okay, we're going to charge with 0 amp, so the energy between the vehicle and the charging station is stopped. However, the charging session stays active, and also the power converters of the charger are connected to the grid, which can cause some problems like a lot of reactive power. Yes, and for the ISO 15008-20, none of the vehicles supported it, and one charging station claims to support it, but there was not a combination that we could test, so that was not tested. And one good thing to mention, as I say, the battery system could be used as a charging station or as a vehicle. When it was used as a charging station, we write it down as such, and when it's used as a vehicle, also we write it down as a vehicle. Therefore, you see 5 vehicles and 4 charging stations. And the results with ELAAD we did not take into account into the results. Then we have the interoperability results. So in total, 80 combinations were tested on a DIN spec, and at the end, all 18 were successfully done. 3 of the combination had to make some slight adjustments, either in the charger or in the vehicle, but after that adjustment was made, charging was also working. 9 smart charge combinations were tested, 6 of which were done by an OCPP profile, and 3 had to be done manually. And all 9 combinations were successfully. Pausing was tested on 6 combinations. However, only 2 of those combinations were successfully. So for the next event, that would be a main focus point. Then the ISO 15008-2 protocol. As I said, all vehicles prioritized the DIN spec over the ISO spec. Therefore, when choosing a charging protocol, most of the time the DIN spec was chosen. There were some charger vehicle that could set one as default. Therefore, the 4 combinations were tested. And at the 15008-2 spec, 3 smart charging were done manually, and no pausing was tested because of lack of time. So, some conclusions about the interoperability testing. Well, all vehicle charging combinations that were tested were able to charge, and all vehicles prioritize the DINS protocol. Therefore, in the field, you will almost always see that the DIN protocol is used. which can cause a lot of problems with fast charging. As I said, the protocol we gave was only to advise the parties to start testing. They were also free to test other features. So one thing that was tested was the CP/PP connection loss. This is the communication line between the charger and the vehicle. And yeah, what we see that all the combinations, when this connection was lost, that they stopped gradually, so in a safe and controlled manner. And what we also test is what happens when the emergency button is used. Is the charging always stopped immediately, or does it happen gradually? And we see in some cases that it did not happen instantly, but gradually. So then you have the case it's a stop button and not an emergency button. So it also should not be used as an emergency button. I also mentioned Elaad participated in the test. We did all kind of different tests, but also power quality testing. One test we did, it was a voltage dip. So normally the grid is 230 volts. And what we did a short voltage dip to 100 volts, which can happen in the grid when, for example, there's a short circuit somewhere else. And what we see at this test that some of the chargers increase the current on one of the phases. And this is unwanted because if the current is increased, the protecting devices can trip and then your charger is powered off, and you don't want that. Yeah, so ElaadNL is testing power quality for all kind of chargers, and we also advise you to do that before you enter the field, because the grid connection at the construction site is not always ideal. Okay, then to wrap up the conclusions, the first one is that there is more standardization needed in the protocols and also for smart charging. There's more standardization needed for where the charging point is, what kind of LED lights are used, and how the emergency button is used, and that it is an emergency button and not a stop button. And the last thing, we concluded that for reliable and stable charging, testing is essential. Well, good news, the second BuildZero testing event is already scheduled. It will be held from 19 to 21 of May 2025. We have already some participants that already confirmed that they participated. Staat, ABB, Hitachi, Kempower, Hotel, Sani, Fusion and Highvolt. And during this event, we will focus more on the ISO 15008-2 protocol, make sure in advance that they can be set as default. And we're also gonna focus more on delayed pausing and charging, delayed and pause charging. And next to that, we're gonna do some overnight testing during this event. So that was already the results of the test event. If you're interested in testing, you can contact our colleague Jan. He's our relationship manager, and he can help you with testing at Elaad.
Thank you, Robert. Very interesting insights. And you see that we always learn from this kind of events. For everyone who is interested in reading through the conclusions and the main findings of the event, you can expect the report being published in a few days from now. So keep an eye on the ElaadNL website, and of course, this web talk is recorded. You can have a look back on YouTube. So if you think it's interesting for colleagues or companies you know, please make them aware of the fact that you can have another look on this web talk. I think this was it. Let's have a quick talk with our panel.
Okay. Thank you, Flip. Thank you, Robert. Robert is quite popular. People were calling him all the time. But People want to join the next Zero Build event. Yes, let's call in Gerard and Hans. Can you turn on your cameras? There you are. Let's start with Gerard. Can you introduce yourself? What company you're from?
Yes, of course. I'm from GMB. That's a construction company, and I represent here at ENI, which stands for Emission-Free Network Infrastructure. ENI is a foundation. We have about 45 plus members, and they come throughout the whole value chain of emission-free heavy-duty machinery. That means that about half our members, they are from construction companies in the infrastructural sector, and the other half of our members, they are consists of machinery dealers, converting companies, rental agencies, battery, genset producers. And what we try to do within ENI is that we try to cooperate pre-competitively to speed up the development and the availability of the zero emission of highway machinery. And we try to do that within the range of above 20 tons because that has the most challenges. So that's us, and we cooperate with a wider range of stakeholders. We have contacts with government, grid operators, public procurement organizations, and industry associations. Your microphone is off.
Your microphone, Martijn.
Rookie mistake. What was your involvement in the BuildZero event? We already saw you in the video, but what was your take on it?
Yes, we are one of the initiative parties. We were there with one of our machines, and we talked to Robert. And you at Elaad. Elaad is already an ENI member, and we make the comparison between the EVs testing and the machinery. So that's our involvement. And then we called Hans from BMWT and asked him if it would be a good idea.
And that's a nice introduction. Hans, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Martijn. My name is Hans Zwaanenburg. I'm the interest representative by BMWT, and BMWT is the trade association or industry organization of importers and suppliers of construction machinery, warehouse equipment, road construction machinery, and transport equipment. Almost all major importers and suppliers in the field of work materials are a member of BMWT, and in total we have 100 members and approximately 120 companies who are certified to perform inspections under the BMWT Keur quality system.
Okay. And what were your expectations from the research? And were you surprised by the outcomes of the tests?
I think gain insight into where and how we can scale up. What are the opportunities for standardization? The high level of involvement of market parties, national and internationally, has positively surprised me. We need each other, and to be able to scale up and standardize. And this test event has taken the first step in that direction. We need standards, we need compatibility, And the Netherlands is leading the way, and therefore we need standards and compatibility, and we have to work on reliability, compatibility, and we need future-proof machines. So the tests are very helpful. We did by Elaad.
We have some questions coming in. I don't know if we can answer them all because they are coming in quite rapidly. This is quite extensive and it's pretty detailed. By Ein, I don't know if the name is good, ElaadNL Zaka. Thank you all for the presentation inputs. As always, your studies are very interesting. Nice compliment, thank you. We can see in the video all CCS2 used for charging. Is this sufficient for the application of electrical construction equipment on the construction site? Hence, charging overnight is sufficient. Or does the construction site surely also need high power opportunity charging? So are the OEMs also looking for example MCS? I don't know what that means. Can someone
means
answer?
megawatt charging.
Megawatt charging.
Yes,
And,
megawatt charging, where CCS can go up to 400 to 600 kilowatts, MCS can go up to 3 megawatts. Whether that is needed right now, I think that the question is for Gerard, Flip, or Hans.
Yeah, I can say something about that. What we see, we have different types of usage of the machines. So a machine about a 30-ton excavator, it needs about 4, 5, maybe 600 kilowatt hours per day for a full working day. So at the moment when we can charge during the night, about 40 to 60 kilowatt charging is sufficient. We also see OEM machines that cannot yet last a full working day. And then you need the opportunity charging. At the moment, the fastest charging of machines is about 100, 150 kilowatts. So we don't need megawatt charging right now. What we want, we use the machines in the field, and we must have full working day because of the dynamics on a construction site. When we rely on fast charging during the break, it gives us a lot of logistic problems. So at the moment, CCS2 is sufficient, and we want CCS2 because with CCS2 we can pause, we can smart charge, we can much more. We have much more influence on the type and the way of charging. I hope that's sufficient answer of the question.
Okay, let's see. We have other questions coming in. Remco van der Panne, could it be interesting to test for about 6 to 9 hours next time instead of the 90 minutes we did at the BuildZero event?
That is a possibility, but then you can test way less combinations. And the focus on the event is to make as much combinations as possible. It is interesting to test for longer. It is something we want to add in the night of the event. So during the day we test 1.5 hours, maybe shorter, maybe longer. But then in the end, at the end of the night, we make some combinations, put them on a smart charge algorithm and charge overnight and see what's happening. So that's something we can add.
Okay.
And from a user standpoint, Martijn, we want to test with more time because we notice that the quality of the construction site electrical installation is also much more of greater importance than before DC charging with EVs. And when you charge your EV on a fast charge, you do it around 10 to 20 minutes. Our machines, they charge the whole night, and demands a lot of the electrical installation. So yes, we want to learn and get more experience with longer charging sessions.
Okay. Let's see, a question by Tobias Stucker. Could you elaborate a bit on why the DIN charging protocol is undesirable in a smart charging situation? Robert,
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The DIN protocol is the oldest DC communication protocol, and it did not have a sophisticated feature for pausing a charging session. So what you can do is saying I want to charge with 0 amps, and then there is no energy transferred from the charger to the vehicle. However, the charging station and the charging session stays active, meaning that the power converters in those charging stations will also stay connected to the grid. And that can have all kind of problems with reactive power, power quality, you name it. So what you want to charge with the ISO-2 protocol, in which there is a sophisticated way to pause a charging session. Then you actually, the connection stays active, but the charging session will be paused, and also the power converters inside the charging station will disconnect from the grid.
Okay. Let's see another proposal or request, I think. Carl Eubel. I would like to propose testing automatic robot charging using CCS and or other types of charging interfaces like ABB Staubli or Roxys. Any ideas on that?
So you wanted to test it?
If I'm well informed, we have another project in which these kind of technologies also are part of the research program. But we have to note this question and come back to that later.
Okay. Well, for everybody, when we can't answer a question immediately, please email us at info@elaad.nl and we will get back to this. But this is an interesting question, so we will keep it in mind. Let's see. Otherwise, this is interesting, but it's a bit early in the presentation. I think it was Robert. You were mentioning colors when with charging, and Ramon Herings asks, and what color when charging was complete or none? Is there a color?
Not yet, but I think it's a welcome addition to the range of colors. I think that's something we have to discuss with the parties. Maybe we can come up with something that's useful.
Okay. And yeah, this maybe you already mentioned it, but there will be another BuildZero event, and we already have participants. But if manufacturers or building equipment producers or anyone is interested in participating, how can they reach you, and what will be the difference with the first edition of the BuildZero?
If you are interested in the second or maybe a third edition of the BuildZero Test Event, you can best contact my colleague Jan Karens. You can contact him at jan.karens@elaad.nl. It was also earlier on the slides. And what the main difference will be, we will have the same chargers as we had at the first edition. However, we're going to use different construction vehicles and different batteries.
Okay.
And the testing focus will be more on the -2, pausing and overnight testing will be added.
Okay. Let's see. Well, we are running out of time already, but I was wondering for some insights. Can I ask Hans, what is your key takeaway of this web talk, of this presentation, and the results of the tests? Can you give us a final comment?
Yeah, hopefully it's clear that it's necessary to for standardization. We have to scale up and there's a lot of work to do. We already start. It gives us ideas to bring it further, and now we have to make the next step.
Yes. And Gerard, what do you take away from this? Well, the first BuildZero and the actions to take for now.
A few things. What was very nice to see was that the various OEMs, initially they were only working with their own equipment. However, as the test day progressed, information was exchanged, and it was apparent that everyone benefits from improving the interoperability. This non-working equipment reflects on the whole sector, not only on the OEMers who experience these difficulties. So that was nice to see. And as soon as the realization was there was room to talk to each other about standardization in the pre-competitive setting. So that was nice to see. And what for me was an eye-opener was the difference between the two protocols. So all the OEMers, they want to make the machines work with an old protocol for when we encounter old charging equipment. But that was the main problem, that we had problems with the new protocol. And everyone in the current market, they are buying equipment and new charging equipment. So we don't need the old protocols. We must get rid of them. So that was my main takeaway from it.
Thank you. Flip, what are your final thoughts, or maybe a peek into the future?
Well, I agree totally with what Gerard just said, and I think it's good to understand that these BuildZero test events and this BuildZero project will last for another 2.5 years. So it's very likely that within 1 year, 1.5 year, we have a third, probably a fourth test event. And each event, you see, there will be new topics that comes up, and that we also have the capabilities within the BuildZero project to address these things, to research them, to test them. We need to consider this challenge as a bigger thing than just these test events, and take all the things that we get out of the test event forward. Work towards a situation that we scale up the smart charging, and therefore also a smart charging sites on the construction site.
Okay, thank you. And Robert, your final thoughts on this subject, and what are you looking forward to?
I'm mostly looking forward for the next event. Do some more advanced testing, have more equipment, more combinations. So that's what I'm looking forward.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you. Many thanks to Flip and Robert for your presentations, and Hans and Gerard for your viewpoints on this subject. As you all know, the BuildZero event is already open, I think. So we are organizing it, and we are very welcome for parties who want to join. Our next web talk is in 2 weeks. It is the presentation about a pilot with grid-aware charging at home. If you want, please register for that. That one will be in Dutch. And you can rewatch this web talk later on YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our newsletter, or keep you informed on our website. Thank you again. Thank you all. And I will wish you a pleasant day. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.